Chapter 5 Miss Lonely Hearts and the Clean Old Man. In the street again, that is, after he blew it going back to his fiance's house, the fiance that he's been ignoring now for months since she accepted his proposal for marriage. But of course, he can't have a real significant relationship so long as the world and all of its woes is pulling at him. Now that he's blown that, because she seemed rather, Betty that is, seemed rather welcoming to him, but then he went into this sort of vicious attack against her. In the street again, Miss Lonely Hearts wondered what to do next. He was too excited to eat and afraid to go home. He felt as though his heart were a bomb, a complicated bomb that would result in a simple explosion, wrecking the world without rocking it. He decided to go to Delahanty's for a drink. In the speakeasy, he discovered a group of friends at the bar. They greeted him and went on talking. One of them was complaining about the number of female writers. And they've all got three names, he said. Mary Roberts Wilcox, Ella Wheeler Catheter, Ford Mary Reinhardt. Then someone started a train of stories by suggesting what they all needed was a good rape. I knew a gal who was a regular until she fell in with the group and went literary. She began writing for the little magazines about how much beauty hurt her and ditched the boyfriend who set up pins in a bowling alley. The guys on the block got sore and took her into the lots one night, about 8 of them. They ganged her proper. That's like the one they tell about another female writer. When this hard-boiled stuff first came in, she dropped the trick English accent and went in for scram and lamb. She got to hanging around with a lot of mugs in a speak, gathering material for a novel. Well, the mugs didn't know they were picturesque and thought she was a regular until the barkeep put them wise. They got her into the back room to teach her a new word and put the boots to her. They didn't let her out of for 3 days. On the last day, they sold tickets to niggers. Miss Lonely Heart stopped listening. His friends would go on telling these stories until they were too drunk to talk. They were aware of their childishness, but did not know how else to revenge themselves. At college, and perhaps for a year afterwards, they believed in literature, had believed in beauty and in personal expressions as an absolute end. When they lost this belief, they lost everything. Money and fame meant nothing to them. They were not worldly men. Miss Lonely Hearts drank steadily. He was smiling an innocent, amused smile, the smile of an anarchist sitting in the movies with a bomb in his pocket. If the people around him only knew what was in his pocket, in a little while he would have to kill the president. Not until he heard his own name mentioned did he stop smiling and begin to listen. He's a leper licker. Shrike says he wants to lick lepers. Barkeep, a leper for the gent. If you haven't got a leper, give him a Hungarian. Well, that's the trouble with his approach to God. It's too damn literary. Plain song, Latin poetry, medieval painting, Huysmans, stained glass windows, and crap like that. Even if he were to have a genuine religious experience, it would be personal and so meaningless except to a psychologist. The trouble with him, the trouble with all of us, is that we have no outer life, only an inner one, and that by necessity. He's an escapist. He wants to cultivate his interior garden, but he can't escape. And where is he going to find a market for the fruits of his personality? The farm board's a failure. What I say is, after all, one has to earn a living. We can't all believe in Christ, and what does the farmer care about art? Takes his shoes off to get the warm feel of the rich earth between his toes. You can't take your shoes off in church. Miss Lonely Hearts again begun to smile. Like Shrike, the man they imitated, they were machines for making jokes. A button machine makes buttons no matter what the power used, foot, steam, or electricity. They, no matter what the motivating force, death, love, or God, made jokes. Was their nonsense the only barrier, he asked himself? Had he been thwarted by such a low hurdle? The whiskey was good, and he felt warm and sure. Through the light blue tobacco smoke, the mahogany bar shone like wet gold. The glasses and bottles, their highlights exploding, rang like the battery of little bells when the bartender touched them together. He forgot that his heart was a bomb to remember an incident of his childhood. One winter evening he had been waiting with his little sister for their father to come home from church. She was 8 years old then, and he was 12. Made mad by the pause between playing and eating, he had gone to the piano and had begun a piece by Mozart. It was the first time he had ever voluntarily gone to the piano. His sister left her picture book to dance to his music. She had never danced before. She danced gravely and carefully, a simple dance, yet formal. As Miss Lonely Heart stood there at the bar, swaying slightly to the remembered music, he thought of children dancing. Square replacing oblong, and being replaced by circle. Every child everywhere in the whole world, there was not one child who was not gravely, sweetly dancing. He stepped away from the bar and accidentally collided with a man holding a glass of beer. When he turned to beg the man's pardon, he received a punch in the mouth. Later, he found himself at a table in the back room playing with a loose tooth. He wondered why his hat did not fit and discovered a lump on the back of his head. He must have fallen. The hurdle was higher than he had thought. His anger swung in large drunken circles. What in Christ's name was this Christ business, and children gravely dancing? He'd asked Shrike to be transferred to the sports department. Ned Gates came in to see how he was getting along and suggested the fresh air. Gates was also very drunk. When they left the speakeasy together, they found it was snowing. Miss Lonely Heart's anger grew cold and sodden like the snow. He and his companions staggered along with their heads down, turning corners at random until they found themselves in front of the little park. A light was burning in the comfort station, and they went in to warm up. An old man was sitting on one of the toilets. The door of his booth was propped open, and he was sitting on the turned-down toilet cover. Gates hailed him. "Well, well, smug as a bug in a rug, eh?" The old man jumped with fright, but finally managed to speak. "What do you want? Please let me alone." His voice was like a flute. It did not vibrate. "If you can't get a woman, get a clean old man," Gates sang. The old man looked as if he were going to cry, but suddenly laughed instead. A terrible cough started under his laugh, and catching at the bottom of his lungs, it ripped into his throat. He turned away to wipe his mouth. Miss Lonely Hearts tried to get Gates to leave, but he refused to go without the old man. They both grabbed him and pulled him out of the stall and through the door of the comfort station. He went soft in their arms and started to giggle. Miss Lonely Hearts fought off a desire to hit him. The snow had stopped falling, and it had grown very cold. The old man did not have an overcoat, but said that he found the cold exhilarating. He carried a cane and wore gloves because, as he said, he detested red hands. Instead of going back to Delahanty's, they went to an Italian cellar close by the park. The old man tried to get them to drink coffee, but they told him to mind his own business and drank rye. The whiskey burned Miss Lonely Heart's cut lip. Gates was annoyed by the old man's elaborate manners. "Listen, you," he said. "Cut out the gentlemanly stuff and tell us the story of your life." The old man drew himself up like a little girl making a muscle. "Ah, come off," Gates said. "We're scientists. He's Havelock Ellis and I'm Kraft Ebbing. When did you first discover homosexualistic tendencies in yourself?" "What do you mean, sir? Yeah, I know, but how about your difference from other men?" "How dare you?" He gave a little scream of indignation. Now, Miss Lonely Heart said. "He didn't mean to insult you. Scientists have terribly bad manners. But you are a pervert, aren't you?" The old man raised his cane to strike them. Gates grabbed it from behind and wrenched it out of his hand. He began to cough violently and held his black satin tie to his mouth. Still coughing, he dragged himself to the chair in the back of a room. Miss Lonely Hearts felt as if he had felt years before when he had accidentally stepped on a small frog. Its spilled guts had filled him with pity, but when its suffering had become real to his senses, his pity had turned to rage and he had beaten it frantically until it was dead. "I'll get the bastard's life story," he shouted, and started after him. Gates followed, laughing. At their approach, the old man jumped to his feet. Miss Lonely Hearts caught him and forced him back into his chair. "We're psychologists," he said. "We want to help you. What's your name?" "George B. Simpson." "What does the B stand for?" Bramhall. "Your age, please, and the nature of your quest." "By what right do you ask?" "Science gives me the right." "Let's drop it," Gates said. "The old fag is going to cry." "No, Kraft-Ebing sentiment must never be permitted to interfere with the probings of science." Miss Lonely Hearts put his arm around the old man. "Tell us the story of your life," he said, loading his voice with sympathy. "I have no story." "You must have. Everyone has a life story." The old man began to sob. "Yes, I know. Your tale is a sad one. Tell it, damn you, tell it." When the old man still remained silent, he took his arm and twisted it. Gates tried to tear him away, but he refused to let go. He was twisting the arm of all the sick and miserable, broken and betrayed, inarticulate and impotent. He was twisting the arm of desperate, broken-hearted, sick of it all, disillusioned with tubercular husband. The old man began to scream. Somebody hit Miss Lonely Hearts from behind with a chair. Okay, so in Chapter 4, we see that Miss Lonely Hearts, being made aware of the woes of the world via his column, has turned out to be a terrible, awful fiance slash boyfriend, mistreats his girlfriend slash fiance terribly. Like it has a contaminating effect on one's personal life to give over too much thought to other people. And in this chapter, chapter 5, we have him and another newspaper guy that he meets in a bar after hanging out with guys talking about raping women and all sorts of terrible things like that. Before you know it, he and this other writer, this other sensitive, as it were, are dragging some old guy out of a public toilet and A, harassing them, and then B, physically assaulting him. And it says that when Miss Lonely Hearts is turning his arm, literally breaking a strange old man's arm, he's doing it on account of desperate and brokenhearted and sick of it all these people who write into him. Like the only way he could respond back to the woes of the world is to be a violent man towards the people who fall into his periphery. Like the only thing he has left is to respond with violence. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed.